Hi, I'm Dan Carusi, Vice President and Chief Learning Officer for Deltek, and welcome to Govconversations. Today I'm joined by Mason Holloway, Senior Director from Deltek, and today we're going to talk about organizational change management and implementing technology. Mason, welcome.
Hi, Dan.
So we hear the term used OCM quite often, organizational change management. What does that really mean? What is OCM?
Yeah, it's a great question. So OCM stands for Organizational Change Management, and it's a set of activities that are designed to help an organization adapt to large-scale changes. For example, implementing a large-scale technology like an enterprise resource system, like Deltek, for example. So it's a set of strategies that help them address the people, the changes that technology are going to inflict on the organization, particularly around process and how people do their jobs, and get all that in place so that when you get to go live, people aren't scrambling to try to make up the ground.
So Mason, there's a lot of misconceptions around OCM on what it is and what it is not. So I'm hoping you can share some clarity as to what they are and what it really is not with everyone.
Well, I hope I can, because it's an issue that I run into a lot. So the whole term change management has been thrown around, it's been misused, and consultants have unfortunately oftentimes given it a bad name. It oftentimes gets confused or oversimplified into two things. On one end, communication, we'll just tell people, and on the other end, training. Well, if they know how to use the system, we're great. And I like to tell folks that those are components, but they're necessary, but they're not sufficient to success. So the organizational change management is more than a simple solution like a communication plan or like a training plan. It brings together a whole lot of things. It looks at functional impacts. It addresses communication and training, but in the right form, format, and quantity to get you where you need to go. So it's a complete system. What it's not is a simple solution. Kind of to sum it up, I always tell folks, chatting ain't changing, and telling ain't transitioning.
So if I'm implementing a product, or better, a technology, can I just implement the technology? Why would I want to implement with it an organizational change management solution?
Right, another great question. So this comes up a lot. You know, they have to use it, right? It's their job, and if this system matters to their job, well, we'll turn it on, they'll use it. And to some extent you could say, well, that's true. However, thinking about people that you've worked with, people can resist change in all sorts of ways. They can make deliberate mistakes. They can adopt the new technology very slowly. They can, and we often see this, they can create workarounds. They can do part in Excel or some other system that they're used to and comfortable with. So not preparing them, not getting them comfortable and in sync with the system is a big mistake.
So being a leader in change, you've been doing this for a long time. You've had to stumble across many challenges along the journey. What are some of the biggest challenges OCM change management faces, and what are some of the ways to overcome them?
Right. If I were to sum that up, I'd say the single biggest challenge for OCM is a fundamental lack of understanding within implementation teams. So what I mean by that is oftentimes implementations like Deltek are driven by technology and finance. And in those worlds, quite often things are very linear. I do A, I do B, and as a result of that, C happens. And this is just not the case in organizational change management, or OCM. While we're doing A and B, we're expecting impacts in D, E, and F, and we're keeping our eye on C and D. So all of this is happening, and it can be very complicated. We often end up having to do what I would call a change project within the larger change project, and that's around helping the project team get their mind around the activities that we have to engage in. So that's probably the single biggest challenge an organization faces.
So Mason, there's a lot of offerings for change management, what I call more traditional generic change offerings, focusing on changing behaviors and other changes within an organization. What is specifically different from change management for ERP or technology implementations versus those standard traditional approaches?
Yeah, so there are a lot of approaches out there, and a lot of organizations have adopted a number of them, right? You can have big names like John Kotter and his 8-step approach. You can have the PROCE approach. There's a lot of them out there, and they tend to distill down into the same set of activities. And they all come kind of out of the school of behavioral psychology. How do you move people from a current state through some transitional state to the future state that you desire. So in your question, I mean, there's consistency in those two things. What differs in an ERP is really, at the heart of it, a business value proposition. You're saying, how does the system enable the business to deliver incremental value that we couldn't deliver before? And in looking at it from those set of lenses, we have to approach functional impacts. We have to look at how the system is going to fundamentally change people's ability to produce value in their job. And that entails process, it entails policy, procedure, a lot of different parts and pieces that typically aren't part of the tool set of your more generic change approach.
So Mason, thank you for joining us today and sharing your thoughts on organizational change management and implementing technology.
You're welcome. Thanks, Dan.